Hello my beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about the Dreamer palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. I'm going to do a very brief overview on this palette, share swatches and 3 look tutorials in this video. I usually talk through the applications of each look, giving you the thoughts on the formulas that I'm currently working with. In this video I will do a very brief overview about the palette. I'll show you the swatches and share 3 look tutorials with you, as well as my thoughts on all the textures and formulas and shades and how they work together and blend and apply throughout this video while I do my makeup look. If you would like to hear my detailed thoughts on this entire palette and how it performs, then watch through the entire video. And at the end of this video, I will give you some extra final first impression thoughts on the palette as well. But before we get started, I would love to welcome new visitors and viewers to my channel. Hello, my name is Eve and I love all things beauty. Here on my channel, I share about beauty and lifestyle. I upload new videos every week. If that sounds like your cup of tea, I hope you enjoyed this video and subscribe to my channel if you're not yet a subscriber. And now without further ado, let's dive in. So the Dreamer palette from Unearthly Cosmetics was available on a pre-launch on November 18, and I purchased my palette that day when the brand revealed 3 shades. So I practically purchased this palette blindly. I did not see the full color story. However, when I saw this design of the palette, I was drawn right in. The design is absolutely stunning. The palette is cardboard. It does have a full-size mirror. It feels magnetic, like magnetic closure. This is cruelty-free. The shelf life is 24 months and it's made in China. And the outer packaging looks exactly the same as the palette itself, and you get more details printed in the back of the packaging, outer packaging as well as on the palette itself. There's a lot of information here in the back of the palette, so if you dispose the outer packaging, you'll be just fine with the palette. Another thing that I wanted to show, because this is really cool, is the very outer box. This is how everything was packaged inside. The same design all around, the same information that is on the actual palette and on the cardboard outer packaging of the palette. And then when you open this up, it had a really nice thick foam inside. So the palette was just nicely tucked in here. I have to say that this is a really nice touch, especially knowing that this is pretty much a luxury price point here that this palette is retailed for. This is a 12-pan eyeshadow palette. You get even amount of 6 mattes and 6 shimmers, and I will talk about the formulas a lot more in details throughout the tutorials that you're going to be watching, as well as at the end of this video. One thing that I wanted to mention is there is a note in the back. There are 7 shades. There are pressed pigments and only need to be used for cheeks. They're not intended to use around the immediate eye area. So I just wanted to point that information out. Okay guys, on this eye, I would love to start from this side of the palette. I am going first into the shade Soothe. It's a very beautiful pink shade. I'm going to start blending it into my crease. So far it shows up very comfortably. This is my absolute first time trying this palette. I've only swatched it so far. I have not applied anything onto my eyes. So far the payoff is really nice. I'm getting a little bit of an impression that if I blend this shade too much, then it blends away, but it does build up to a pretty comfortable opacity, as you can see. Then I'm going to go into this shade right here called Muse. This is a beautiful mid-tone mauve shade. Now I'm going to build up the crease area, see how these 2 shades perform together, and I think they blend into each other really nicely so far. I do not have any issues. And then the shade is true to color. I'm getting the same color payoff what I see in the pan. I actually really like this shade. It's really pretty. These 2 shades blended into each other comfortably, but I feel like I lost that initial pink shade in the transition. So I feel like the second shade took over a little bit, but just initial thoughts. Now I'm going to go into this brown matte shade. It seems to be a little bit more on the cooler side. The shade is called Night Owl, and I'm going to place it in my outer corner. So far the pigment is nice. I don't know, I'm noticing a little bit of patchiness here in this area. Do you guys see? I don't know if you do, but my outer corner also kind of patches out. It packs, like you see the color packs, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit of like kind of patchiness. I'm going to apply the same shade on my lower lash line, just ever so slightly. I feel like it does go on skin and it blended out, but I also notice a little bit of patchiness here. It's like slightly bit uneven. I don't know, we'll see for the rest of the palette. This is, like I said, it's absolute first impression. Just adding this shade on my lower lash line just to blend it in a little bit. Good thing so far is that I don't really have any fallout under my eyes, so that's good. So now I'm gonna go into the shimmer shades, and I think I'm just gonna mix these three on my lid. I'm gonna start from my inner corner with this shade. It's called Float. This shade has a really nice base, but the reflect seems to be very glittery. I don't know if you guys can see it on camera, but there's a lot of glitter in this shade, but overall it's really pretty. I'm gonna go into this purple shade that's called Fantasy. I wanna show you how it picks up on a brush. This purple shade seemed to have a dark base, like either a gray or grayish black base. So this purple comes out really bright. Then I'm gonna go next into this shade called Imaginary. Okay guys, this is the finished look. I finished off this look with this Tower 28 mascara and then the LA Girl pencil on my waterline. This is the Shockwave line in the shade Vivid. And these are all the shades that I used. I basically used the entire 6 pans on one side of the palette. I think all the shades came together really nicely. So I used the 3 mattes and 3 shimmers. A few thoughts about these shades that I just used. The mattes seem to be consistent formulation, how they pick up. There's quite a bit of a kickback when you pick up the shade from the pan with a brush. I felt like this one would blend away easier than the other 2 shades. I would need to stop in a specific moment before the shade starts disappearing basically off of my eyes. This shade overall was fine, and once I added this brown dark shade, I just noticed that on my outer corner it would patch out a little bit. It would pack, but once I start blending it would start patching out and the blend would be a little bit uneven. So for most part I'd have to go back and forth between blending and packing, and ultimately after a while I'll just have to pack it with a smaller denser brush here on the outer corner so it doesn't look like it's actually patchy. They're not necessarily ideal to my opinion, to my preferences of formulations for mattes, however they're workable, and I think the look finally came together really nicely. As far as the shimmers, this shimmer definitely has a lot of glitter particles. It's very reflective, but it's noticeable like glitter, considerably big glitter particles. When it comes to these 2, I think it's a little bit smoother. This purple shade definitely has like a dark gray, almost black base to it. This shade is really pretty. I did use a flat brush to apply it initially, and I definitely recommend spraying the brush, which I didn't the first time around because again, this was my very first time I ever tried to put these shades on my eyes. So I applied after all with my finger, and I think the warmth of your skin actually melts the eyeshadows pretty well, and then it just sticks to your lid better that way, and it actually gives you a better punch of color. Let me know what you think about this look, but let's go ahead to the look number 2. For look number 2, I think I'm gonna just stick to this area of the palette. I'm gonna start with this gray shade called Clouded. I'm gonna start from here. I seem to be applying nice so far, and it packs really nice as you can see, and the color looks true to color. Then I'm going to use the same brush, and I think I'm going to go into this shade next. It's called Engulf. I'm trying to pack this shade at this point, but I feel like it's not sticking to my lid. It's not sticking to my lid, y'all. Do you see how it's not sticking right here? And if I'm trying to blend it, do you see how it patches out here? Because I see that. Let me switch to a little bit softer brush. Do you guys see the patch? Wow, that's a big mess. Let me pack this with a smaller brush. It's not sticking to my lid. Do you guys see that? Do you guys see that it's just literally not sticking here? It's a little bit better than the first time around, but it's still not very seamless. Okay, I just cleaned off my brush and I want to just blend it out right here a little bit on the outer, very outer edge. I cleaned off my blending brush and just trying to blend out this area right here. I don't know if you can see, guys, but I'm blending on the very outer edge of this area, but for some reason I see more patches happening in my outer corner. I'm gonna do the purple shade Slumber on my lower lash line. I like to go to this pink shade, put it right here in the inner portion of my eye on a lower lash line, just to soften up this area just a tiny bit. These are my 3 shimmers. They're on this side of the palette. So I think I'm gonna do this one and this one on the lid, and this is gonna be my inner corner. So I'm gonna start from the inner corner, and it's this shade that's called Dream State. Then I'm going into this shade. I'm going to pick it up with my flat brush, but this time I'm actually going to spray the brush. And I want to show this to you. You see, when I pick it up with the brush, it acts like a cream formula. So there's really no fallout, but nothing goes on my brush, as you can see. So it's very odd. I have to almost press it much harder with the brush to get anything on the brush. So there's a little bit on here, but I'm going to go ahead and spray this. It definitely becomes a little bit more foily, but it is harder to apply when it's like this wet. It definitely packs a punch, but it's harder to spread it. But it sticks to the lid much better, and again, it gives you a more punch. I will do the same thing with this shade. It's called Tranquil. I want to show this to you because this seems to be having so much texture, actually. Look how much got on my brush, and it just seems like there's like chunks in the pan now. So these are all the shades that I used, 3 mattes, 3 shimmers. I think the look generally came out really nicely, but it took me a little bit of an effort and work to achieve the shape and the blend. As far as the shimmers, they definitely need to be sprayed. I just noticed a little bit of inconsistency between this shimmer, this specific one, because as of right now, between these 2 looks, I tried pretty much the entire palette. This shimmer has a lot of chunkiness to it, and when you pick it up with a brush, it definitely picks up with a brush, but it absolutely needs to be sprayed, and there's a lot of texture in the pan. The other 2 shimmers, they're beautiful. It's a very interesting shade though, because it looks somewhat pink here. Then on the swatch, it looks a little bit more of like a lilac iridescent, and then on the eyes, it definitely pulls more lilac. Generally, the look and all the shades came together really nicely. I think the look looks cohesive. As far as the mattes, I think they feel quite dry, you guys. They definitely are workable, but it just requires a lot of work between going back and forth between the brushes from one size to second to third. And I think it just requires a lot of work. It took me a while to do this makeup look. This eye makeup look doesn't even look that complex. It was very straightforward. I feel like I put so much work into it, like so much effort blending back and forth. It really shouldn't take this long. Let me know what you think of this eye makeup look. Personally, I think it came out really nice, but definitely took quite a bit of effort. For this last makeup look, I am creating something that's quite neutral. And on this side, I'm going to show you exactly how I achieved this. First, I'm going into this shade right here, the pale pink, called Soothe. So again, I'm using this shade, and I already shared some of the thoughts on this shade a little bit earlier. And I think that I still agree with what I said earlier. It is quite sheer color, and I continue just redipping my brush because I do not get the pigment right off the bat that I would want. Also, the color, that the more you blend, the more it blends away. So you kind of have to know that limit, when to stop blending it so you don't blend it away, basically. I wish this shade had a little bit more of a wider base so it would show up on skin much better, but this is as far as I can build it up. I had to redip my brush every single time, so just so you get an idea. For my lower lash line, I'm going to start with this shade again on the inner corner, continue with this one, and I'm going to use this brown shade to deepen up everything. It's a very pretty pastel pink, but again, I wish there was a little bit more base to it. This mauve shade shows up a little bit better, and I think it is definitely a little bit more pigmented and true to color on my skin tone. So the brown shade performs really well, and it's definitely bringing a lot of pigment. So I'm actually going very light-handed and using like the smallest brushes, especially on the detailed areas like this. So I'm gonna start stamping it here in the outer corner. I'm gonna clean off my brush on a color switch. So I just want a clean brush without pigment, and then I'm gonna start blending. This color is blendable, it's workable, let's say. I like the word workable better than the word blendable for this type of texture. But as you can see, it's patching out. It's not terrible, let's just say, but it's patching out. It's giving me the same exact effect. And I struggled with this eye as well. So I'm going to just start with this brush, and then I'll have to switch to 2 more brushes to finish out on this outer corner. I just have to say, guys, I'm very much struggling right here to make this color stay in my outer corner because I tap it right here with the tiniest brush, and I really like the brushes that I'm using right now. These are basically one of my favorite brushes when I do my makeup. You probably have seen all these brushes like over and over and over in my tutorial videos. And I'm struggling. I'm packing the color in, but as soon as I touch it with a little bit of a fluffier brush, the color just goes different directions and patches out and just kind of blends out in such an uneven way. I'm trying to keep my cool right now, but I feel like I'm losing it, and I feel like I'm just gonna leave it wherever it is, and we're just gonna roll with it because I feel like I'm putting too much energy and time into something that's such a basic look. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. Like I said, I'm gonna go and pick up this shimmer with my finger. This shimmer shade is really pretty. It has this like almost like a peachy champagne-y color. It has a really nice base to it. As you can see, it's here on my lid, but it has a lot of glitter, like chunks of silver glitter. I'm not a huge fan of that. It's definitely picking up on the light very beautifully, and it looks really pretty on eyes because it's nice and shimmery, but just generally the consistency of it just feels like it's full of glitter. I just don't feel the experience, like the luxury experience of like a $65/$75 palette. You know what I'm saying? For my inner corner, I actually want to use this shade again. It's called Tranquil. This has a lot of texture, so I'm going to pick it up on the brush and I will have to spray it. Like cool tone pink and lilac together with iridescence. It's actually very, very pretty. I really like it. It's a very interesting shade, but I need to like reapply it here as well. I did some finishing touches on this makeup look with Lancome Idole Aligner. It's in the shade brown, and also my Nabla favorite Cupid's Arrow, a Styler Arrow number 2 brown. This is on my waterline. This is pretty much what I use every time. Every time you see a brown liner on my waterline, this is what I use. This is my favorite. Then Nabla lip liner. This is Close Up Lip Shaper, and this is in the shade Nude 01. And then Kiko Milano 3D Hydra Lip Gloss, and I have mine in the shade 03. And my mascara today is the Tower 28 one. I do want to share my final thoughts with you on the palette. Of course, this was my first 3 times that I used this palette. However, I did dip into all the shades, and I have some thoughts. I just want to say that the packaging design is so cool. This is just such a cool design what they came up with, and I think it does reflect into the color story. I think it's a really nice design when you look at the palette from the outside, you open it up, and here it is, right? Like this is your beautiful color story. I think they did an amazing job on the packaging. The color story is so pretty. I really like how this palette is organized. This palette has an equal amount of mattes and shimmers. The way I created my looks, I just basically split the palette in half. So I did a look with this side, then this side, and then today I just needed something neutral. As a final result, I think all the looks came out really beautifully cohesive and beautifully reflective. Another feature that I wanted to mention about this palette is that all the pans are magnetic, and you can rearrange this color story the way you want them. For me, I personally enjoy how the palette was organized. It's easy for me to read this palette the way it's organized. However, if you would like to rearrange it any other way, maybe have shimmers in one row and then mattes in the other row, you can, because the pans are magnetic and removable. You can travel with them as well. The palette itself is a cardboard, but it's magnetic, but overall it just feels like it's well made. So as far as the quality of this palette, if you've been here on my channel for a while, you know that I've purchased my first Unearthly Cosmetics palette earlier in 2023, and I was deeply disappointed. I've heard so many wonderful things, should I say nothing but the best, about the Unearthly brand and their eyeshadow palettes and quality of the eyeshadows, that I wanted to try another palette from them and just give them another chance. And I said, there's going to be one last chance. If this one doesn't work out for me, I'm no longer purchasing from this brand. I'm done wasting my money. And let's just say this palette was a luxury price tag. I feel like for every person, it may be different. For you, it may be $150, $300. For some people, it's $40. So we have different value for our money. After 65, it's luxury price tag, and expectations for the luxury price tag obviously goes to another level. The quality from these eyeshadows, both mattes and shimmers, is definitely improved from that first awful palette that I've tried from them. I'm not going to go further into the details about my first palette because you can check out my eyeshadow palette declutter video that I did at the end of 2023, as well as my monthly rankings. I've spoken about that palette as well in more details. So the quality of both mattes and shimmers is significantly improved from that first palette that I've tried from Unearthly. But overall, all the shades are very, very beautiful. I think they're very interesting shades. They're not boring shimmers or anything like that. As much as I like this color story, as much as I think it's workable and the formulas are definitely improved and the looks came out as a final result, I think they came out really nice and cohesive. However, I struggled with the mattes. The shadows still feel considerably dry. Once you start blending them, even just ever so slightly, somehow they just go different directions. I felt like it was, in a way, difficult to control. So I found myself going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, switching between 2-3 brushes, you know, trying different techniques. I just felt like, yes, my look came out nice at the end, but was the time worth it for the looks that I achieved? Because they were not anything like artistic or super extraordinary. They were pretty. What I'm trying to say is that I put so much effort and time and energy into creating those looks. Looks did not look that complicated. I feel like I put too much time into it, too much effort. And again, this color story is very pretty and I enjoyed all the looks that I created. However, with the amount of effort that it took me to work on those looks, I started thinking about the similar shades that I have already within other palettes in my collection, and I thought of few. I already right away thought of few that I could create very, very similar looks, and I know that those shadows would not give me even a half of a trouble that I went through making these eyeshadows work. So this is just my opinion, this is my experience, my initial thoughts. This is my first 3 looks that I created with the palette, so you can take my words with a grain of salt, but I will also tell you, whenever I have a new palette in my hands, I like to test it fully. Every single shade, different color combinations, and I usually get a pretty good idea about the palette, like what's what. See how shades perform together, how they perform on their own, try different techniques. So I really love to test the eyeshadow fully. And I think I did pretty well with this one, even just with 3 looks, because this is pretty straightforward palette. And I just want to say that my opinion after me trying the entire palette the way I like to try my palettes, my opinions usually do not change. Doing makeup, especially the eye makeup looks, is very therapeutic for me. Love to get inspired by the color story. And this color story is very inspirational. The packaging is so cool. I pick up this palette and I was like, yes, I want to create looks because I like all these shades. But once I think of how difficult it is to blend something, and then I have to go through, I don't know, 15 different brushes to work with 4 different shades, it almost kind of kills the vibe. So these are my initial thoughts. I hope this was helpful for you and gave you a little bit of a perspective. I know there's a lot of love on the platform about Unearthly and the quality of their eyeshadows. I don't think I fall into the majority of the people. Let me know if you have any additional questions, comments, leave them in the comment section below. I would love to chat with you there. If you enjoyed this video and if you'd like to see more tutorials and eyeshadow palette related content, eyeshadow palette reviews with multiple look tutorials, I will leave a playlist, related playlist in the description box for you underneath this video, as well as in the cards at the end of this video. So stick around, explore my channel. All my playlists have been recently organized, and I invite you to subscribe to my channel if you're not yet a subscriber. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in my next videos. Bye.